Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
If you're gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Why, hey there, my fabulous listener. Welcome to episode 238 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you, as always, for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I do appreciate you making my podcast one of them. Today, we are talking about QR codes, those itsy bitsy, tiny, wonderful pieces of marketing gold that feel we kind of underutilize as far as using them to create more traffic and more sales in our business. So that is that subject for episode 238. But before we get there, if you are enjoying this podcast, I would love for you to take a screenshot and share it on your socials and tag me, because it would be super cool to get to know you a little bit more, just like you get to learn a little bit more about me every episode that you listen into. You can, of course, find the show notes for this podcast on my website at allthews socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/238. Now, did you listen to last week's episode? I had the amazing Selena Knight on, and we talked about scaling your business and how that's not a bad thing to want more. I really do feel that there are a lot of conversations happening at the moment that, play small, don't make too much noise, just keep to yourself. Whereas, it's like, no, it's not a bad thing to want to expand and grow and be an empire, or even just earn more money. So it was a really interesting conversation with Sal last week. Check it out on episode 237. But before we get started on talking about itsy bitsy QR codes, I wanted to give a shout out to this week's podcast sponsor, Joe McKenzie from Call on Joe. Joe is the digital partner you've been looking for in your business. Joe works with small businesses just like you to reduce the tech overwhelm. She'll build your website, she'll keep it updated, and also do all the troubleshooting for you. I think once we get a website, we don't realize all the work that needs to be done after the website goes live. So having someone like Joe in your corner to help you will be a huge burden off your shoulders. But Joe also does email marketing, social media, and so much more. So if you need tech help in your business, call on Joe. Get in touch with Joe on her website at allthews.callonjoe.com.au, or of course you can find her on Facebook and LinkedIn. All those links to Joe's website and to her Facebook and her LinkedIn are, of course, in this week's show notes, which were at allthews socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/238. But if you head to Facebook, head to LinkedIn and type in Call on Joe, I'm sure you will find her there. And if tech is doing your head in, call on Joe. Thanks so much, Joe, for sponsoring today's podcast. Now, let's get back to QR codes. I have long loved these little pieces of gold. I remember using them like 10 years ago in my marketing and literally had to explain to people how to actually use them. They didn't know how they worked, but now, as we all know, after 3 years of that C thing that's been happening in our lives, everyone knows how to use QR codes and what they're about, basically. So I thought today I might share with you 5 ways that you could be using QR codes in your business to help drive traffic and more sales. There are probably a billion ways that you could use QR codes in your business. We're just going to share 5 of them, plus a few little examples that I've found both on the internet, but also thinking about different ways that I've seen QR codes being used in recent times that have just struck me as really innovative and a little bit interesting. So some storytelling and some tips as we go along. But before we get started, let's have a think about how to make Not have a think. Let's have a chat about how to make QR codes. Of course, QR codes, QR stands for quick response code. So if you're wondering what a QR code stood for, it's actually quick response. M- My suggestion for creating a QR code is to go to canva.com. So all the W's, canva.com. If you don't have an account already, you can sign up for free and you can create one. But Canva makes QR code building super easy, and literally within like 2 or 3 clicks, you can have one and start using. So to make one in Canva, choose a blank template. So obviously go to Canva and choose a blank template, like perhaps an Instagram post, for example. And then in the left-hand menu, you can choose apps, or it used to be under more, but I've gone and had a look as I'm recording this, and it's actually under apps. So have a look under apps, and if it's not there, have a look under the more tab. And then just simply choose QR code. Put in the website address that you want the QR code to direct traffic back to. And that, when I say website address, that can be literally any website address. It could be your website, it could be your social handles, it could be um, to an article you wrote that's been published in the Entrepreneur, or I don't know, the Financial Review, whatever you want, wherever you want it to go. It just has to have a URL basically to send people to. And then you're done. You generate the code and it's done. It's super simple. Just a heads up. Do make sure you test it yourself before putting it out to the world and using it. Make sure it actually works. Just a little hint there for perhaps something that I may or may not have done in the past. All right. So now on to let's have a think about how we can. Now we've created one, what can we actually use it for in our marketing? So I've come up with 5 ideas. Like I said, there are literally hundreds of ideas, but I thought these ones were to share on the podcast today. So the first one is business cards. So whether you have a printed business card to physically hand to people or a digital version, a QR code is an amazing way of taking that one marketing thing and turning it into lots of marketing things. So scan my QR code and it pops a mobile friendly website page that's being created specifically for meeting new people. There's maybe a welcome and a hello part to the page. There's links to connect with you on your most um, active social media platforms, maybe a link to your website, or maybe even a special freebie that is specifically designed to surprise and delight any new connections that you make. A simple QR code can make your humble business card that's normally just sharing phone numbers, etc., to a real community building tool, basically on steroids. A bit of a pro tip here is that you can be ever evolving this mobile friendly web page that you've created. Um, you can tailor it to wherever you are in business at any given times, or tailor it to the offering that you've got going when you are going to an event. You might create something specifically for that event. The QR code destination doesn't have to change. It's the offerings after they scan it that can change. And I really love that idea that you can really make this QR code work for you, and make it work over and over and over again. All right. So the second thing that I was thinking of that would be super cool to use QR codes is probably one thing that as business owners, we don't really do all that well inside our businesses, or some of us don't do really well inside our businesses, and that's gathering customer insights and feedback. Often it's because it's hard to ask for feedback, or we know our customers are super busy, and we think, how can we make it simple for them to give us feedback? And of course, enter the QR code. You can create a survey through Google Forms or something like SurveyMonkey. Create a QR code that goes to that address and use it to give to customers to get their feedback. It's simple for you and it's simple for them. You could actually even print it out and put it on your reception or on your counter if you have a bricks and mortar. You could send it out with your orders to get direct feedback about your products. And you could even print it on your customer receipts, as you make sales through your, I guess it would have to be something you could customize, but, having it on your receipt could be super cool. And again, what's behind the QR code is where the magic can happen. Yes, it could be, to get customers insights and feedback, but it could also be to send them to give you Google reviews, when they enjoyed your products or your services. Like, if Google is a strategy that you really wanna double down on, then having more Google reviews on your business profile is something that you should be putting some weight behind. So, therefore, how can you do that? Maybe you could do that through QR codes. So, the third one is probably a little bit of an obvious way to use QR codes, and that's to, have people scan the QR code and it sends them to a link to exclusive coupons or discounts or even competitions that you're running. Again, I think they work really well in directing traffic to an exact place you want them to go and can be really personalized and really niched. And using them here, making them exclusive is probably part of the, scarcity and scarcity sort of idea behind this marketing is that you need to make people feel special. Making these things exclusive, of course, will help build loyalty and incentivize sales in a really innovative way. My fourth example that I was thinking of when writing this podcast, or recording this podcast, I should say, is going back to taking the example that I gave with the business cards and think about how you could use QR codes in your business to to surprise and delight your customers with this QR code scanning. Of course, I mentioned with the business cards that, it could be something exclusive for them for that event that you're at, but maybe just overall with your marketing, when people scan a QR code, you could send them to an exclusive piece of video content for them, or maybe you could share your favorite playlist on Spotify and they'll get to listen to that. I'm kind of thinking about the old fashioned mixtapes when I was thinking about playlists on Spotify. Or maybe it's about it's storytelling and telling more of your story that, you can't really put out to the world, or you can't put on a product, or you can't put on a particular website because it looks too busy. But scanning the QR code would take them to a particular place that enables you to tell more stories. Or of course, it could be all about giving more information on a product or a service. If it's a product, then maybe it's a suggestion on how else you could use that product other than what it was probably originally purchased for. When I think about these things, I think about there was a really cool Facebook group. I don't know whether it still exists. It doesn't come over my feed anymore. Thank you, algorithm. But maybe I should have gone searching for it before mentioning it on the podcast. But there used to be a really cool group around Kmart hacks and Kmart products. It wasn't put out by Kmart, but it was like one of the best marketing things I think you could ever have done. I'm sure that they did have some control over it. But basically, it was kind of like, go and buy this from Kmart, and it might be a box, but here's 1,000 other ways to use the box. And but some people are seriously creative. And that's what I'm kind of thinking of with maybe if you sell a product, what are some other creative uses for that particular product? I guess an example that I can think of off the top of my head is, I'm a candle fan. I absolutely love candles. In fact, I have way too many candles and I just love burning a beautiful candle. One of my favorites is actually the Murray River candles put out by my friend Nicole. So if you haven't come across Murray River candles, go and search that or go to my online marketplace. So spendwithus.com.au and search Murray River candles. I absolutely love them. Anyway, getting back to candles, what do you do when you finish with the jar? So obviously, they come in these beautiful jars, but the candle only lasts a certain amount of time. So, what can you do to upcycle that? So, maybe the QR code is sending them to a Pinterest board that has lots of ideas on how you can upcycle the jar when the candle is done. Or maybe it goes to your own website where you've got some suggestions on what they can do. It's all about customer experience, I guess. A customer experience is everything in 2023. And I can tell you, with all honesty, if your target market is millennials or Gen Zs, customer experience is becoming more and more important. There is definitely a podcast episode coming up about customer experience, but I'll just leave this one here. But again, we're thinking about what you can do with QR codes. My fifth and final thought was around virtual tours. So, if you have a physical location, create a QR code that links to a virtual tour of your business. This is a really great way to showcase your products or your services, but can also help build trust with customers who are a little bit hesitant to visit you in person or visit your place of business in person. I would put some behind the scenes footage in there because people love that stuff. Or you could even think about scavenger hunts using QR codes. I've seen some great uses of QR codes in zoos and on farm experiences involving QR codes that are a mixture of both educational and fun facts, but also, find these. Did you see this? Scan this and make sure that you can see this while you're standing there. It makes marketing fun. And I think that's a brilliant thing. Marketing can be fun. Who knew? Um, so there were my 5 ideas that I came up with, but I just wanted I guess for me, QR codes, I really love going to a restaurant where you can order through a QR code, where I don't have to stand in line, where I don't have someone hovering over going, "Are you ready to order yet?" Because I don't know, as I get older, I get a little bit, less decisive. Um, yeah, I just like the idea of sitting down, relaxing, and not having to get up and down for drinks or up and down for food. I can just go there and order on a QR code. And I have no restaurant experience, but it must be simpler for the kitchen as well. I don't know. Maybe you could let me know if it's not, but I assume that it's simple for the kitchen as well. I've also seen QR codes used really well on TV commercials recently. Basically the TV commercial is a big screen with a QR code and a few words, but an over voice. And I think that is just it's a little bit more, actionable, like you are watching TV, but and we've all got our phones in our hands. So the idea of being curious, I guess, as to what's behind the QR code, I really like that. And I've also seen when they've advertised perhaps new programs and they've used a piece of music behind it, there's often a QR code, to scan to get that piece of music and to listen to it in the whole, like the whole piece of music, which I think is a really genius collaboration between the brand and the artist of whose song it is. I've also seen them used well on wine bottles, using them for storytelling, but also I think it was Brown Brothers around Christmas time with their, I can't remember which wine it was that I purchased that they did this to, but it was actually a QR code that you scanned and you could actually tailor or personalize a message to the person you were gifting the bottle of wine to. So someone gets a bottle of wine as a gift, scans the QR code, and it's a personalized message from the person who gave it to them. I just think things like that are genius. Like that's creating, using tech to create a really great user experience. JC Penney in the US did something very similar with Santa tags, enabling personalized voice recordings on the gift tags that they had. Again, huge innovation and a great providing just a great customer experience on all levels. I really when I was researching QR codes, I came across this one, which I thought was really interesting, and that was that Ralph Lauren has used QR codes to prevent their products, um, sort of from being taken as fake imitations. So they've actually incorporated unique QR codes in each of their items so it can be digitally identified and authenticated as the actual real product. I just think that is brilliant. Like everyone's getting really smart with things. But to think that you can again, try and take away the questions of your customers. Is this real Ralph Lauren or is this fake? Again, I know that people can emulate QR codes, but I thought that was really interesting way of using QR codes. And for yourself, if you have something that you sell that's unique or bespoke, how can you use QR codes to your advantage, a bit like Ralph Lauren did? Other ways QR codes are being used by businesses to make life simpler for their customers is in the returns process. So, scanning a code to create a return note for a product that you would like to return to the retailer or to the business. Providing product manuals rather than printing ones, which also means that they can save on paper, of course, but they can be updated and amended where necessary as well. So I think that's a really great use of QR codes on products. And of course, linking to customer service information, such as phone numbers or addresses or frequently asked question pages, making that just super easy for your customer to get to, I think just creates a really great customer experience. One negative thing, though, before we finish up today, when you are using QR codes, you really do need to think about where you're using them. I do see them being used, for instance, in someone's Instagram feed. And I think to myself, well, I'm actually on my phone on Instagram. So I'm not quite sure how I can use my camera to read the QR code and stay on Instagram at the same time. So and because Instagram is probably a little bit different to other social media platforms, such as LinkedIn, because it is very mobile based. It just doesn't make sense. It's a little bit like, not really sure how I can do both. So just really thinking about where you use QR codes for the end user. Is that an easy place for the end user to be able to use their phone to scan the QR code? So you've got to think about it logically you know, end to end with users. But I love QR codes. I think they are little pieces of gold. I think we do underutilize them as small business owners. So I'm hoping that maybe this podcast episode has helped you think about how you can use them differently in your business to create not only more traffic to a particular place like your website, but also create more sales within your business and a better customer experience. If nothing else, they can really tailor your customer experience. If you've got questions or you've got thoughts or you've seen a really great use of QR codes and you'd love to tell me about them, I would love to hear that. You can get in touch or you can head into the Like Minded Business Owners Facebook group and tell everyone over there. If you love this podcast and found it valuable, then I would love you to take 30 seconds out of your day and leave me a rating and a review. If that is possible, where you are listening to this podcast. Um, of course, because one of the goals of mine for 2023 is to reach more people with this podcast. So you can help me achieve that by leaving a rating or a review. Thank you so much in advance. I will see you next week for podcast episode 239. But again, just before we go, thanks so much to Call on Joe for sponsoring today's episode. Don't forget, if you need help, call on Joe. Get in touch with Joe via her website at callonjoe.com.au. And of course, the links are in my show notes. But in the meantime, if we aren't hanging out on social, let's get social on social. You'll find me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peeps, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
No time like the present. Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.